Alright, so here we are. Next part of the S600. This is the steering rack. I was sort of not looking forward to this because I knew it would be hard to find the seals in it, but then I remembered that it's actually non-power steering, so it shouldn't be too complicated. It feels smooth, which is nice. The rack ends and stuff are very rusty, so they might be a bit of a pain, but hopefully everything goes alright, because if it doesn't, this is the only steering rack I have. I've got no spares, so hopefully we can save it. So I'm just putting some penetrant on all the rusty sections. I'm trying this stuff, which is a different brand. Normally I use WD-40. It's kind of annoying that it comes in this tub with no brush, or like it doesn't come in a squeezy bottle or anything, but we'll see how it goes. So while we wait for that to sort of soak in, I'm going to cut these boots off. I can buy reproduction S600 rubber boots, but they're pretty expensive. So I've got ones like this, which are just a universal one, so hopefully I'll be able to find something like this at the shop that'll fit it, because it's just a rubber boot. It's just to keep the dirt and stuff from getting in there. So I'm not really sure how this is actually held together as far as how the rack ends are screwed on. I will stick it in the parts washer, but I'll give this a brush first, try and actually see how it's held together, because it's a bit long, so if I can get the rack ends off and then put in the parts washer, it'll be a bit easier. Oh, I can already tell this is going to be hard. Right, so to crack ball joints that are stuck, this might not work, because this is like proper rusted on, it's not regular stuck, this is extreme stuck. But you put the nut back on so you don't accidentally hit the thread, and the thing I see most people do is they hit it like this. What you actually want to do is hit the side, because all you want it to do is deform that taper for like a split second and it pops off. So I'm going to put the nut on just to help protect the thread so I don't accidentally hit it, and then we're going to whack the side of it, see if it pops off. Hey, there we go. I was about to say I'm going to have to take this to the vise, but that last one cracked it. I'm going to undo the tie rods off the end. So if you take them off a normal car, normally there's a washer that you bend over a flat section to lock them in. There's this ring on the outside, you can see it's got a dent knocked into it that holds it in this space. So I'll just get a small chisel and tap that dent out, and then it should just be a matter of unscrewing them. Should be. Now, I'm pretty sure these won't be left-handed, but we'll find out. Cool. That came off pretty easy. I wasn't expecting it to be too hard. This is so soaked in grease and oil that I wouldn't think it'd be too rusty inside. So I'll flip it over and do the other end. That's not a knife. This is a knife. A tip for cutting through rubber as well is if you spray some WD-40 or something on the blade, it makes it like not grip into it as hard and it cuts it way easier. I should probably buy another Stanley knife at some point, but I don't want to buy a Stanley knife when I've got S600 bits I need to buy. Alright, so here's an interesting problem. Back in the old days, tie rod ends like these and rack ends were rebuildable. You didn't just chuck them out and buy new ones. What just happened is when I unscrewed this end, instead of unscrewing the rack end out, it's actually taken the rack end apart. So you can see there's this little ball inside it, which is the bit you replace, and there's this little bronze bush that fits over the ball, and then that's all tightened together, and that's where the pivot comes from. So if this was 1965, I'd be able to go to the parts shop and just buy the internal bits to rebuild the rack end. You can't get them anymore. You have to just buy a whole new thing like a modern one. But I have to get this bit off now, which is going to be awkward because the flats to undo it are on this end. Alright, so we'll worry about this in a minute once the rest of it's apart and I can clean it in the parts washer. I'm going to actually get the rack out of it now. So basically, here's the rack teeth. This shaft here has a little gear on it, and when you turn the gear, it pushes the rack in and out. So what it looks like is this is welded on, it doesn't come off. So I'm guessing I undo this nut and this will come out this way somehow. And then on the side here, there's a circlip, and under this will be probably a little bronze bush with a spring, or actually, it'll be a little bronze bush that rides on this flat surface and keeps this pushed, keeps the rack pushed against the gear. So I guess first we'll pop this out and see if we can see what that little bush is, and once the bush comes out, they'll make the whole thing easier to take apart. This doesn't look super rusty. It does have a lot of paint on it. Well, oh, are you serious? Oh, never mind. I thought it snapped in half, but the paint just came off in like a C-clip shaped piece of paint. Oh, I heard it hit the ground over there somewhere. But there's a little cap, there's a little spring. Underneath that should be a little brass bush or bronze bush or something. It doesn't want to come out. We'll leave it in there for now. This is loosened up a lot now that that spring tension is off it, so we'll undo this nut and see if we can get the whole thing apart. Now, I pretty much never use my rattle gun because it's loud and annoying, but for stuff like this where it's sitting on a bench and you can't like hold it down, it's really nice. Oh yes, I was about to say please don't be a taper press fit, but it's not. So there has to be this piece here. I don't know if you can see these little where's something to point with. There's little notches cut in this. This piece has to come out somehow. Ah, there we go. So this piece has to come out to get this bearing out, because it obviously doesn't come out the bottom because this is welded, and even if it did come out the bottom, then it's welded. So what we'll do is, it looks like there's a split pin in here. I'll bend the split pin out, pull it, and then hopefully that piece will unscrew, and then the bearing and the gear and everything will come out. So if you can see what I'm doing, this is the way I normally pull. You get these sort of clips on like suspension nuts. What you do is once you get the pliers through it, you can lever it out. But the problem is it gets to a point where you're sort of pulling it around in a curve and it makes it harder. So you get anything that's metal, put it in there, then you use that as a leverage point so it's still pulling it straight. And then once it starts to pull at an angle, you put a fatter part underneath it. Yeah, and it makes it really easy to work these sorts of split pins out. So now that the split pin is out, hopefully we can encourage this to unscrew. I assume it's a right-hand thread. It doesn't look like it's moving. I reckon I'm just going to have to beat the crap out of it, but I don't want to because I'm going to damage it. What I might do is I'll give it a few more taps, and if not, I'm going to make a tool to fit in there and unscrew it. So it looks like I need to make a special tool to make that. And so this will be the first time you've seen the plasma cutter on my channel, I think. So basically I built this about 6 months ago because I really wanted a CNC plasma cutter, but they're really expensive. So this one I actually designed myself, and then I just made all the bits and pieces here and bolted it together. You can see it uses a standard handheld plasma cutter mounted to the table, and then I've just got a flat plate so I could attach a router to it or a plasma cutter or whatever I wanted to cut with. And then I just draw the design on the computer and the plasma cutter cuts it out for me. So I'll draw up the tool that I need and we'll get it made. So I'm standing here waiting for this to load. The program I use for this is Fusion 360. I use it because it's got CAM and it's got CAD. So CAD is for designing stuff, and the CAM is what like drives the plasma cutter and tells it what to do. The CAM works. I use it because it works. The CAD is a steaming pile. I hate using this program and I really want to find something else. I've literally been standing here for 10 minutes waiting for it to open to start off with, and everything with it is a struggle. So I do not recommend, but at the moment, the CAM side of it is all I could get to work with this. If I have something complicated to draw, it's actually easier to draw it in Google SketchUp and then convert it to a DXF and then send it to this, so I don't have to draw it in this and then send it to the CAD section, and the CAM section, and the CAM section puts it to the plasma cutter. So Fusion 360, avoid at all costs. Speaking of Fusion 360, it's just come up and said I have to do an update. It doesn't let you use it unless you update it, and because I'm at the shed, not at home, I'm using the internet through my phone. So now I'm going to smash through some of my phone download because Fusion refuses to work without being updated. And before you say you run it off the internet, it won't open unless it's connected to the internet. Everything about it's great. After an hour of trying to get that to work, I've given up and brought it in SketchUp. So after a large amount of stuffing around, here's my tool. I'll cut it out and bend the ends. This is the program for the plasma cutter. It's going to go cut the thing out, probably make a mess of itself, and then at the end it goes and cuts the whole thing in half, which it does sometimes, but not this time, hopefully. Alright, so I always do a test run without the plasma cutter turned on to make sure it goes the right way and doesn't go off the edge of the piece of metal or anything, so go. Already got an error. Big surprise. Alright, so I think we're ready to go. I don't quite remember the speed for cutting this thickness of steel, but we'll start it at 1000 millimeters a minute and see where it ends up. No good. Okay, so I think I had the plasma cutter too close because this is like, there's a few little bits where it's still stuck in. It should just fall out, so I'm going to try it again, redeem myself. That's a new problem. this one cut out fine. That one got 90% of the way around and gave me a new error. So third time's the charm, I guess. So I just tried it without the torch on and it ran fine, no error. So I guess we'll just do the same thing again and hope it works. Cool, I'm an idiot. That time I left it too close to this one and so it cut into the blank space and then stopped. So let's move it further up and make a fourth one. When it works, it works. When it doesn't work, it really doesn't work. Ready? Fourth attempt. It's already off the edge. Stop, 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 stop. Right, this still counts as fourth attempt because I stopped it before it started cutting. Alrighties. Alrighties. Yeah. Yeah, look at that. That wouldn't have taken me 10 minutes to make with a drill and an angle grinder, but instead I spent an hour cutting it out with the plasma cutter. Right, we'll bend the ends down, trim them to size, and then good to go. So there's the tool finished. I made these really long because they're easier to hold in the vise and get a nice bend, and I cut them shorter. I also made them slightly wider and then filed them to size because I wanted this to be an exact fit, and I haven't quite worked out, depending on how thick material is, the plasma cutter puts thicker or thinner like a gap in it, and so to get exact dimensions I need to do a bit of fine tuning, so I just made it a bit over and filed it. Realistically I could have made this with a angle grinder faster, but that's sort of just part of building your own machine like that. For complicated stuff it's faster than a grinder, but little stuff I can still beat it by hand, but a bit more work and refinement and soon it'll be well faster than anything I can do, but we'll actually see if it works now. Wow, these are really tight. I wonder if this is a left-hand thread. I wouldn't be surprised. Come on. So here's the problem. The tool keeps popping up and out of the teeth. So I've put the rack in the press. I've just got light pressure holding this piece of tube to hold the tool into the teeth. And now I'll see if I can tap it. Yeah. So, when I release this, I've got to take bets. Is it either going to be the tool missing its teeth, or it's going to have unscrewed? Ready? Oh, yes, it's actually turning. Aha, alright, back to the bench. Like, once it's cracked loose now, it's really easy to use. Kind of, still pops out a little bit. But, yeah, I definitely wouldn't have got this undone trying to hit it with a punch. It would have destroyed the nut as well. Yeah, come on, nut. There we go. That was more effort than I sort of expected it to be, but it's out now. Now we get to work out how to get this bearing out from down inside that hole. Mint. That was a thumbs up, you just can't see it. And the grease in this is like... The grease is like the consistency of golden syrup, and it stinks. This is the worst smelling grease ever. Actually, it's probably gonna be like the brake pads. I'll find out later it's asbestos grease. The other thing is, the only place I have to pull it is by the thread. And obviously I don't want to pull it by the thread. I'll give it a little pull, but I won't go nuts with it. Nah. How do you come out? I wonder if this thing will come out now. It's got some degreaser. Aha. Okay, wasn't a brass piece, it's a little hardened steel piece. It runs on this flat section, and that's what stops the rack from twisting. You can see it's got play in it now that I've removed that. So that's the rack play adjustment. We'll remember that for later when we need it. Now if this bit would come out, I'd be set. I think this piece that looked like a weld here might have actually just been paint and stuff. Okay, so it's apart, but I slightly damaged it. The piece I was hitting on the bottom is actually this bush, so this should have actually just pulled straight out. I guess I could have used a slide hammer or something. Because I've knocked this bush out, it's chipped the edge of the flange off it, It shouldn't actually be a problem, and then thankfully this is a brass bush and was chipped off by the steel rack, so nothing's like broken, but there is the edge of this missing now. If I needed to, I could remake this, but it still fits nice, turns smooth. I'll give it a lap on a piece of sandpaper and it'll be alright, but now I should be able to slide this out. Oh man, it's got like super gnarly black stuff coming out of it. Alright, chuck all this in the parts washer. So, now that our rack is apart, what are we actually doing with it? Main thing is cleaning all the old grease out. Second, also main thing is inspecting it for wear. So I'll get a different lens and we'll get and have a close look at everything. So the first thing I've got in front of you here is the little pinion that drives the rack. The bearing, it feels crunchy, sounds crunchy, we're going to replace it anyway, it's probably 60 years old. The main bit we're interested in is the actual pinion gear itself. So if I get a little thing to point with, you can see the mark from there to there of where it contacts the rack. What we're looking for is if that area looks particularly lower than the rest of the gear. So we can see a wear mark there, which would have happened as soon as the car drove off the factory lot pretty much, but there's no big low spot. If there was a big worn in dip here like that, that would be a problem, but this one looks okay. You can take up a certain amount of wear with that adjuster in the bottom of the rack, but this one looks okay. The only damage I noticed on this, if I turn it around, is this like mark in it here. So the only thing that keeps dirt out of this rack is the rubber boots on the end, and they were torn to pieces. So I've seen damage like this before on one of my own steering racks, and I've heard of it on other people's racks. What happens is if the boots get torn, bits of dirt and dust and stuff get into the rack, and it'll chew up the teeth like this. So this is probably from a piece of dirt or a little rock or something getting inside the racks. That's why it's important to have rack boots that are in good condition. Especially on an old style rack like this that only has boots, it doesn't have seals. If that boot's ripped, you're literally just letting rocks and gravel into this part of it. Next thing we're going to have a quick look at is the end of the shaft here. This shouldn't be worn because it runs on a piece of bronze, so it'll wear the bronze, but it looks okay. The spline, nothing really to see there, nothing super worn. Next thing we'll get is our little bronze bush. So the outside of this doesn't move, so it shouldn't be worn. Unfortunately, because I'm a moron, I put this big gouge in it. All this does is locate the spline, where is it? Locate the little gear, sliding in and out this way, and it rides on this top surface. So I'll give this a face and it should be okay. The main thing we're looking for here is when we slide it on, we don't want it to be able to pivot this way. So we'll give it a wobble. Feels good, no major play, so I'm going to say that bit's okay as well. So that's our little pinion, all looks alright. The next thing I'll pull up is the actual rack itself. This is where that pinion runs, and once again we just want to have a close look over the whole thing, look at it side on, and make sure if it's worn, you'll see these teeth have a big like divot out of them. They'll be worn out in here. This once again all looks like it's okay, so that's good. There should be that little one that had the rock or something stuck in it. If I find the right one of these, one of them will have a little matching dent in it for where the rock got stuck. The other thing we'll check is the bottom where it slides. You can still see the marks on that from when it was machined at the factory, so that's obviously not worn. This is a bit dirty, but you can still see the machining marks. There's definitely no wear in this. That all looks good. So that's pretty much all the internal stuff we have to check. One last thing we'll look at is we'll just make sure this is all clean. We slide the rack into the housing and just check it for play up and down this way, backwards and forwards. That all feels pretty good. I remember one of my friends' MR2s, it failed rego, and they said that there was the rack end here that was bad. It was actually, the rack was so worn out you could grab this and just kunk backwards and forwards. It was completely flogged. But this one, up and down, feels solid. So this video is probably getting pretty long, which means I'm probably going to end it here. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to head to the bearing seal shop. I'll get seal for the rack on the top. I'll get a new bearing for it, and I'll put up another video once I get those bits and start putting it back together. It's nice that it really looks like it's all in good condition. It's a shame that we damaged this bush on the way out. I could make another one. I've got the tools to do it if I really need to, but I think it's going to be okay. So I'll run with that for now. It's not hard to get out if I need to change it. It's not a power steering rack, so it doesn't unbleed itself and destroy everything. But I'll sit for now. I'll see everyone in the next video. Make sure you subscribe. I've got heaps more videos of this car. There it is. Well, I can't do it because it's in a mirror. There's the car. The S600. Heaps more videos of that coming. Yeah, see everybody in the next video. Bye. My compressor turned on just at the right time to not interrupt.